Okay. If you see your brother's ox or sheep straying, do not ignore it, but be sure to take it back to him. If the brother does not live near you, or if you do not know who he is, now again, this is not like your actual physical blood brother. This is just a fellow Israelite, is the term we're talking about here. Or if you do not know who he is. Now again, Jesus will expand the definition of brother in the Gospels. In this context, brother is being used to refer to your fellow Israelite. But Jesus expands it to say just your fellow man, your fellow person. That's what the whole parable of the Good Samaritan is about. The cat is crazy. I'm not sure what she's doing in there, but she's doing something. If the brother does not live near you, you do not know who he is, take it home with you, the animal, the ox or sheep. Take it home with you and keep it until he comes looking for it. Then give it back to him. Do the same if you find your brother's donkey or his cloak or anything he loses. Do not ignore it. So take care of your brother's stuff. Be your brother's keeper. That's the answer to the question. The question that Cain posed way back near the very beginning in Genesis 4 is, am I my brother's keeper? Well, the answer to that question is yes. If you see your brother's donkey or his ox fallen on the road, do not ignore it. Help him get it to its feet. Excuse me. A woman must not wear men's clothing, nor a man wear women's clothing, for the Lord your God detests anyone who does this. Now, the standards of clothing, of course, change over time. We would consider today the sorts of clothes that men wore back then to be women's clothing, because they wore these long tunics that we would consider something like a dress today. What are you doing, Kat? I don't like that at all. What are you doing? I do not like... No. I don't like that look in there. Get nothing there. What is your problem, Timber? Come here. Anyway, the sorts of clothes that men wore back then would have been these long, full-body, open garments that we would consider basically like a dress. The Egyptians wore skirts. We would call them skirts. The Greeks and the Romans wore these tunic-type wrap things. Kat, what are you doing? She's trying to, I think she wants to climb the curtains. Stop that! She wants to climb the curtains. I got these window curtains, of course, over here, and she's looking at me like she wants to climb the curtains. You just go in the window and stay there, Kat. So the standards of clothing change over time. They do not remain the same from culture to culture or from time period to time period. I don't know exactly what the differences would have been between men's and women's clothing at this point in time. There's no pause feature. Okay, I did this software I'm using right now doesn't have a pause feature, so I'm going to have to just go back and edit this video, combine it with that other one that got interrupted by the phone call. I don't know what the difference would have been between men's and women's clothing at this point in time. They would have worn basically the same kinds of garments. There might have been a difference in the color, maybe in the way they wore it. I'm not entirely certain. I mean, I know the difference between what we consider men's and women's clothing today. You know, we have a cultural history here dating back hundreds of years now that men wear pants and women wear dresses or skirts. And that still more or less applies to this day, although women wear pants a lot more frequently now. Men still don't really wear skirts or dresses. So you have that. That's what we have today. That wouldn't have applied back then because none of them would have worn pants back then. But I don't know, there would have been a difference, some kind of a difference. I don't know exactly what that difference would have been, but there would have been some kind of difference. God made things according to their kind, and that's how he wants them to be kept. It's part of his order of creation. And that is one of the things that if we try to go against that, we're going to be, first of all, we're going to be miserable because we're going to be fighting God and fighting nature. And secondly, we're going to be doomed to failure. We're going to be doomed to frustration and failure if we try to subvert God's order of creation. It just doesn't work. We might think that it does. We may think that we're right. We may think that God is some old fuddy-duddy who doesn't know anything and his ideas are outdated or whatever. But in the end, the more we fight human nature and the more we fight God, the more frustrated we're going to be. It doesn't end up working out well for anybody. If you come across a bird's nest beside the road, either in a tree or on the ground, and the mother is sitting on the young or on the eggs, do not take the mother with the young. You may take the young, but be sure to let the mother go, so that it may go well with you and you may have a long life, if you can go off and have more eggs later on. When you build a new house, make a parapet around your roof, so you may not bring the guilt of bloodshed on your house if someone falls from the roof. Now, in our culture today, we don't really climb on roofs. I've never been on top of my roof, either at home, where I have lived for 40 years now, or this apartment where I've lived now for 17 years. I've never been on either of the roofs. I've had men on my roof. Just a few years ago, we had a problem with the chimney on my roof at the house, so I had a couple of my guys from the church go up there and look at it. We had roofing done around the year 2000 or so, I think it was, when they put on a new roof or a new rooftop or whatever. I have sometimes gotten up on a ladder to clean out the gutters that hang off the edge of the roof. But I've never been on my roof. Our roofs are not really designed to be stood upon. Their roofs back then were. Their roofs were basically just another feature of their house, another room of their house. They had flat top roofs. In fact, a lot of their cities, their bigger cities, were built kind of in step format, where the roofs of the houses literally formed steps that led up to the top of the hill where the city was built on. And you would put your laundry out there, you'd put other items out there. So the roof of the house was basically just another room of the house. It didn't happen to have a ceiling. It was very common, their roofs were actually features of their houses. Our roofs really are not. No one really climbs on roofs of our houses today. Our roofs are not flat. Their roofs are flat. Our roofs are slanted so that the water runs off of them, rainwater runs off of them. Our houses are not all built together. They're not pat together. They're not stacked together in a step format. So we don't really have this in our culture very much. Some places in the world still do to this day. We don't really have that here. But in their day and time, the roof was not just this top of your house. It was an actual room that you did things there. It just didn't happen to have a ceiling. Do not plant two kinds of seed in your vineyard. If you do, not only the crops you plant, but also the fruit of the vineyard will be defiled, or forfeited to the sanctuary. And that again is the idea of mixing and matching. Don't mix and match separate kinds. God made things according to their kind. We read that in Genesis a lot. In Genesis 1 it says over and over again, God made things according to their kind. Don't mix and match the kinds. God has an order to the creation that He set up and that He wants to be preserved. If we try to fiddle with it, we're only going to be fighting ourselves and God. And nobody wins that battle. Do not plow with an ox and a donkey yoked together. Again, don't mix and match. Oxen and donkeys aren't meant to go together. They don't work well together. Don't use them together. Do not wear clothes of wool and linen woven together. Same thing. Make tassels on the four corners of the cloak you wear. I'm guessing that means for the sleeves to your arms and legs. I'm not sure exactly. If a man takes a wife, and after lying with her, so she's no longer a virgin now, dislikes her, and slanders her, and gives her a bad name, saying, I married this woman, but when I approached her, I did not find proof of her virginity. Then the girl's father and mother shall bring proof that she was a virgin to the town elders of the gate. This is very much a cultural thing here. The girl's father will say to the elders, I gave my daughter in marriage to this man, but he dislikes her. Now he has slandered her, and said, I did not find your daughter to be a virgin, but here is the proof of my daughter's virginity. So this is happening. The scenario being portrayed here is someone who regrets the marriage and wants to get out of it, and is using this as an excuse to do so. Then her parents shall display the cloth, some sort of virginal menstrual cloth. This again is not really part of our culture today. Some cultures in the world may still have this element in it, but this is not part of our culture today and hasn't been for quite some time. Before the elders of the town, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be somehow proof that the girl's hymen was not broken before. I mean, that would be the proof of the virginity, but the girl's hymen can be broken in ways other than by having sex. So I'm not entirely certain what they're demonstrating here or how they're doing it, or how definitive this proof actually is, but it's supposed to be taken as proof in their culture. And the elders shall take the man and punish him. They shall fine him 100 shekels of silver, and give them to the girl's father, because this man has given an Israelite virgin a bad name. She shall continue to be his wife. He must not divorce her as long as he lives. This is one of those rules, again, that's intended to be a protection for the girl. This guy clearly doesn't want her to be his wife, so he wants to get rid of her. He's not allowed to, which means he has to take care of her. If he could get rid of her, if he could divorce her, he wouldn't be obligated to take care of her any longer, and her not being a virgin anymore means she'd be extremely unlikely to find anybody else to take care of her either. She could probably remain in her father's household, but then after he dies, she's in a bad state. So this is intended to be a protection for the girl, to keep her from becoming destitute without anybody taking care of her. If, however, the charge is true, and no proof of the girl's virginity can be found, she shall be brought to the door of her father's house, and there the men of her town shall stone her to death. She has done a disgraceful thing in Israel, while being promiscuous while still in her father's house. You must purge the evil from among you. Again, this is considered to be a disgrace against the father. If a man is found sleeping with another man's wife, both the man who slept with her and the woman must die. That's consensual. Consensual adultery. You must purge the evil from Israel. If a man happens to meet in a town a virgin pledged to be married, and he sleeps with her, you shall take both of them to the gate of that town and stone them to death. The girl, because she was in town and did not scream for help. In other words, she's giving her consent to the affair. And the man, because he violated another man's wife. You must purge the evil from among you. Again, this is a consensual affair here. But if out in the country a man happens to meet a girl pledged to be married, and rapes her, only the man who has done this shall die. Do nothing to the girl. She has committed no sin deserving death. This case is like that of someone who attacks and murders his neighbor. For the man found the girl out in the country, and though the betrothed girl screamed, there was no one to rescue her. Basically, this is the difference between consensual sex and non-consensual sex. It's framed here in a way talking about being in a town or out in the country, but it's basically boiling down to the difference between when the girl agrees to have sex with the guy that she shouldn't have sex with, or when she does it and he does it to her anyway. If a man happens to meet a virgin who is not pledged to be married, and rapes her, and they are discovered, he shall pay the girl's father 50 shekels of silver. He must marry the girl, for he has violated her. He can never divorce her as long as he lives. And that goes back to the idea of keeping care. Now, in the previous example, the girl was pledged. She had not been married, but she was pledged to be married. I'm assuming, now, they didn't actually say so, but I'm assuming the guy who pledged to marry her is expected to follow through on the marriage anyway, even after the rape. It doesn't actually say that, but I'm assuming that would have been the expectation. In this case, this woman is not, or girl is not pledged to be married, so she's completely free and available. And so the rapist then has to marry her to take care of her financially for the rest of his life. That is very, 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 very different to our culture today, but that's how it worked back then. A man is not to marry his father's wife. He must not dishonor his father's bed. Again, the sexual sin is actually against the husband. All of these sins are considered to be sins against the husband or the father. I don't know if any of these are seen to be sins against the woman, even the ones where she's being raped. I don't think that was in their mindset as a culture back then. If you have sex with a woman you're not supposed to have sex with, you're violating either your father, if it's someone, if it's his wife or whatever, or her father, or yourself, or her brother, or something. It's like, you're not violating her, okay? Like, she's not really all that important. And that is a fact of their culture. It's like the crime, the sexual crime that you're committing against the woman is not seen as being a crime against the woman in that culture. It's very, 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 very different from our way of looking at it today. But committing a sexual sin against a woman in this culture is seen as an offense against a man of some kind, whether your father, her father, your brother, her brother, you, whatever, whoever it is, it's not seen as a crime against her, and that's just how it is. No one who has been emasculated by crushing or cutting may enter the assembly of the Lord. So eunuchs are not allowed to go in the assembly of the Lord. No one born of a forbidden marriage or of illegitimate birth, nor any of his descendants may enter the assembly of the Lord, even down to the 10th generation. No Ammonite or Moabite or any of his descendants may enter the assembly of the Lord, even down to the 10th generation. For they did not come to meet you with bread and water on your way when you came out of Egypt. And they hired Balaam, son of Beor, from Pethor and Aram Naharaim, to pronounce a curse on you. However, the Lord your God would not listen to Balaam, but turned the curse into a blessing for you, because the Lord your God loves you. Do not seek a treaty with them. Do not seek a treaty of friendship with them, as long as you live. That's kind of harsh, isn't it? You could be the great-great-great-great-grandson of one of these guys, and you're still being blamed for something he did. People had long memories back in the ancient world. One of the things that's actually kind of funny, and this again is our way of projecting our own shortcomings today to people back then. But we have this idea, our modern smart people today have this idea that people back then were very stupid and had very short memories and were constantly making things up as they went along. But people back then had very long memories. They didn't have writing for the most part. The priests could read, but most people could not. So they were committing things to memory. And they had long memories. Something that your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather did to your someone's great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather did to your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather is something that you'll still remember. Okay? They didn't give up on these grudges or these things very easily. Now, we don't see that today. We assume that because we're smarter than them, or we assume we're smarter than them, that means that they forgot things very quickly because they were stupid people. And that's really not the case. I mean, most of our smart people today probably won't say it that way, but that is ultimately what's behind their thought. We're enlightened, we're smart, we're intelligent, we're white, we're Europeans, we're smarter than they were, we know more about their culture than they do or did. And so we feel comfortable in pronouncing these sorts of judgments or things on them. We don't really say it that way, but that's essentially what we're doing. But that ultimately is us projecting our own shortcomings and limitations on them. We don't have that capacity today to memorize or remember things. So we assume they didn't either. But they had long memories back then. They did not forget easily or quickly. Do not abhor an Edomite, for he is your brother. And the Ammonites and Moabites were too, but they were okay to abhor. Do not abhor an Egyptian, because you lived as an alien in his country. The third generation of children born to them may enter the assembly of the Lord.